I never thought that my search for the truth would lead me into the depths of the unknown, let alone that I would be the only survivor to tell this terrifying story. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I witnessed in the secret confines of NASA's Advanced Research Complex, a place that the outside world doesn't even know exists. It was a cold October night when I received the call that would change my life forever. Dr. Elena Volkov, my former mentor and one of the brightest minds in modern astrophysics, spoke with an urgency I had never heard in her normally calm and calculated voice. "We need you here immediately," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We've found something that challenges everything we thought we knew about the universe." I should have realized at that moment that something was terribly wrong. Elena had always been a methodical scientist, cautious in her assertions. But the excitement of the discovery blinded my judgment, and I found myself driving through the night towards the deserted mountains of New Mexico, where the secret complex was hidden. When I arrived, I was greeted by a disturbing silence. The compound, normally buzzing with activity even in the late hours, seemed strangely quiet. The lights flickered irregularly, casting unsettling shadows across the barren corridors. "Elena?" I called out, my voice echoing eerily. There was no reply. Following security protocol, I swiped my badge through the reader and entered the main laboratory. What I saw there froze the blood in my veins. Tables overturned, equipment destroyed, papers scattered everywhere. And in the center of the room, floating a few centimeters off the ground, was a sphere of such deep black that it seemed to absorb the very light around it. I approached it cautiously, feeling an inexplicable attraction. The sphere pulsed with an energy I had never experienced before. It was as if it were alive, conscious, calling to me. It was then that I noticed the bodies, scattered around the laboratory like puppets whose strings had been cut, were my colleagues. Their eyes, wide open in expressions of pure terror, stared into the void. But the most disturbing thing was the way their bodies looked, distorted. Limbs bent at impossible angles, skin stretched and twisted as if they had been pulled by an unimaginable force. The horror of the scene paralyzed me momentarily, but years of training in emergency situations finally kicked in. I ran to the nearest terminal, my hand shaking as I typed in the access codes. The screens flickered to life, revealing experiment logs and security recordings. Quickly, I began to put the pieces of the macabre puzzle together. The team had been working on a top-secret project, codenamed Black Prism. Apparently, an unmanned probe had returned from a mission deep in space with something attached to it, something that defied all known laws of physics. The recordings showed the team examining the black sphere, which seemed to react to human presence. In one of the videos, I saw Elena touching the surface of the sphere with an instrument. The next instant, a wave of dark energy exploded from the object, engulfing everything around it. The recording ended abruptly, but it was easy to deduce what had happened next. My mind was spinning with the implications. We had made contact with something beyond our comprehension, something potentially hostile, and now I was the only one who knew. A sudden noise made me spin around. For a moment, I thought I saw a shadow move in the periphery of my vision. But when I looked directly, there was nothing there. Panic began to set in. I needed to get out of there, to alert someone. But who would believe me? And more importantly, who could I trust? As I prepared to leave the lab, something caught my eye. A small storage device, hidden under one of the overturned tables. With trembling hands, I picked it up and put it in my pocket. Perhaps it contained crucial information. It was at that moment that the lights went out completely. In the sudden darkness, the black sphere seemed to glow with a light of its own, a darkness so deep that it hurt the eyes. And then I heard it, a whisper, so low that it could only have been my imagination, but the words were clear, sending shivers down my spine. "You can't escape. We're already here." Panic took over. I ran blindly through the darkness, tripping over bodies and equipment. My heart was pounding so hard that I feared it might explode in my chest. I don't know how long I ran through the labyrinthine corridors of the complex. Minutes? Hours? Time seemed distorted, stretching out like an endless nightmare. Finally, I saw a dim light ahead, the emergency exit. With one last desperate effort, I threw myself against the door, feeling the cold desert night air hit me like a slap. I staggered to my car, my hands shaking so badly that I could barely insert the key into the ignition. As I sped away from the complex, I looked in the rearview mirror. What I saw almost made me lose control of the vehicle. A wave of darkness, blacker than the surrounding night, seemed to be engulfing the complex. And for a brief moment, I thought I saw shapes moving within that darkness. Shapes that didn't belong in this world. I drove like a madman down the deserted road, my mind a jumble of terror and disbelief. What exactly had we unleashed? And more importantly, how could we stop it? One thing was certain, the world as we knew it was about to change forever. And I was the only one who could warn humanity about what was to come. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, illuminating the desert in shades of orange and red, I made a silent promise to my fallen colleagues. I would discover the truth behind the black prism, no matter the cost. Little did I know that my journey into the unknown had only just begun, and that the horrors I had witnessed that fateful night were just the tip of a cosmic iceberg of unimaginable terror. The hours dragged by as I drove aimlessly through the desert, my mind a whirlwind of chaotic thoughts. The scorching midday sun contrasted dramatically with the chill I felt in my soul. Eventually, exhaustion and the need for gas forced me to stop at a decrepit roadside gas station. As I filled up, I noticed my reflection in the dusty glass of the convenience store. Deep dark circles marked my face, and my eyes had the feverish glow of someone on the verge of madness. It was then that I realized I couldn't just go home. They would meet me there. Who was they? I didn't know for sure. The government? Some secret agency? Or something? Worse, paranoia was beginning to set in, and every shadow seemed to hide a threat. With trembling hands, I picked up the storage device I had found in the lab. I needed to see what was on it, but not here. I needed somewhere safe. That's when I remembered an old friend, Dr. Marcus Chen, who lived like a hermit in the nearby mountains. If there was anyone I could trust, it was him. After a few hours on the winding road, I arrived at Marcus' isolated hut. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of blood red that seemed like a gloomy omen. "My God, you look like you've seen a ghost," Marcus exclaimed as he opened the door. His wrinkled face, framed by a gray beard, showed genuine concern. "Worse," I replied, my voice hoarse. "Much worse." For the next few minutes, I frantically recounted the events of the night before. Marcus listened in silence, his face becoming increasingly pale. "That's impossible," he muttered when I'd finished. "But I've known you for years. I know you wouldn't make something like that up." With trembling hands, I connected the storage device to Marcus' computer. The screen flashed, and a series of files appeared. "My God," Marcus whispered as we scrolled through the data. "This changes everything we know about quantum physics, about reality itself." The files contained details about the black prism. Apparently, the space probe had gone through some kind of dimensional rift, bringing with it a fragment of something that shouldn't exist in our universe. "Look at this." Marcus pointed to a graph. "These readings. It's as if this thing is constantly changing its molecular structure, adapting to our universe." A shiver ran down my spine. "Like a virus," I muttered. We continued to examine the files, each revelation more disturbing than the last. The black prism wasn't just extraterrestrial matter, it was a conscious entity, capable of manipulating the reality around it. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The computer shut down abruptly. "It must be the storm coming," Marcus said, getting up to check the generator. But I knew. In the depths of my being, I knew it wasn't just a storm. A deafening noise cut through the air, like the sound of metal being torn apart. The whole hut shook. "Marcus," I shouted, running to the window. What I saw made my blood run cold. An impenetrable darkness was advancing across the valley, swallowing everything in its path. Trees, rocks, even the light seemed to be devoured by that mass of absolute blackness. We need to get out of here now, I shouted, grabbing Marcus' arm. We ran out of the hut and towards Marcus' jeep. The wind howled around us, carrying a metallic alien smell. As Marcus struggled to start the vehicle, I looked back. The darkness was advancing rapidly, and within it, movement. Shapes that defied logic, writhing and changing by the second. The engine finally started, and Marcus sped down the dirt road. I looked through the rearview mirror, seeing the cabin being swallowed up by the darkness. "What the hell was that?" Marcus shouted over the roar of the engine. "I think it's what's left of the NASA team," I replied, my voice shaking, "or whatever took their bodies." We descended the mountain at suicidal speed, the jeep bouncing and skidding on the bends. Every moment, I expected to feel that darkness catching up with us, devouring us. When we finally reached the main road, I allowed myself a sigh of relief, but it was short-lived. "Look," Marcus pointed to the sky. Above us, the stars were beginning to disappear, swallowed up by a darkness that was spreading like ink on water. "It's spreading," I whispered, the horror of the realization hitting me. "It's not just the NASA complex. It's spreading all over the planet." Marcus hit the gas, the jeep roaring down the deserted road. "Where are we going?" he shouted. I had no answer. How do you fight something that defies the laws of reality itself? How do you stop a darkness that devours everything in its path? As we ran through the night, a dark certainty settled in my chest. The world as we knew it was ending, and maybe, just maybe, we were the only ones who knew why. The black prism had only been the beginning. Now we were facing something much bigger, something that threatened not just our planet, but the entire fabric of the universe. And we were the only ones who could do something about it. Dawn found us at a roadside diner, our nerves on edge. Marcus and I stared at our untouched cups of coffee, trying to process the events of the last 24 hours. "We need a plan," Marcus muttered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "We can't just keep running away." He was right, of course, but what chance did we have against an entity capable of distorting reality itself? It was then that I noticed, around us, the other customers in the cafeteria seemed strange. Their movements were slightly disjointed, like puppets controlled by an inexperienced puppeteer, and their eyes empty, lifeless. "Marcus," I whispered, feeling the panic rising. "I think we need to go. Now." But before we could move, the waitress approached. Her smile was too wide, showing teeth that looked pointed under the fluorescent light. "More coffee, gentlemen?" she asked, her voice a metallic hum that made my hairs stand on end. Marcus, sensing the danger, stood up abruptly. "No, thank you. We were just leaving." As we headed for the door, I felt the air getting thicker, as if the atmosphere itself was trying to stop us. The other customers stood up in unison, their movements mechanical and threatening. We ran for the jeep, the sound of footsteps chasing us. When I looked back, I saw the waitress at the door of the diner, her face now a distorted mask of inhuman fury. Marcus sped off, leaving a cloud of dust behind. In the rearview mirror, I saw the diner being swallowed up by a wave of darkness. "What the hell is going on?" Marcus shouted, his voice shaking with fear and adrenaline. "I think the black prism is spreading faster than we imagined," I replied, my brain struggling to process what we had witnessed. "Somehow, it's infecting people." We drove in silence for hours, each town or gas station representing a potential danger. The radio only transmitted static, interspersed with strange noises that resembled distorted voices. It was when we passed an abandoned military base that I had an idea. Marcus, I stopped the car. He looked at me as if I'd gone mad, but obeyed. "Look," I pointed to the base. "If there's one place that might have equipment to help us understand and perhaps combat this, it's over there." Marcus hesitated. "It's too risky. What if it's infected like that cafeteria?" I knew he was right, but what choice did we have? "We have to risk it. It's our only chance of finding answers." Reluctantly, Marcus agreed. We approached the base cautiously, each shadow seeming to hide a threat. The main gate was open, swaying gently in the breeze. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of metal. Inside the base, we found signs of a hasty evacuation. scattered papers, abandoned equipment, and an occasional trail of blood that I preferred not to examine too closely. It was in the main laboratory that we made our most shocking discovery. A large containment tank dominated the center of the room, filled with a black liquid that seemed to move of its own accord. "My God," Marcus whispered. "They had a sample here." I approached the tank, fascinated and terrified. The black substance seemed to react to my presence, forming complex patterns that resembled fractals. "Look out!" Marcus shouted, but it was too late. A tentacle of liquid darkness erupted from the tank, enveloping my arm. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, as if every cell in my body was being rewritten. Visions flooded my mind: distant galaxies, alien civilizations, alternative realities, and something else. A vast and ancient entity waiting in the depths of space-time. With a superhuman effort, I managed to free myself, falling backwards. Marcus rushed to help me, his face pale with horror. "Your arm!" he exclaimed. I looked down and almost fainted. My arm was covered in an intricate pattern of black lines, pulsing with a strange light. "What's happening to me?" I asked, my voice shaking. Before Marcus could answer, a deafening alarm began to sound. Red lights flashed, casting dancing shadows across the walls. "We need to get out of here," Marcus shouted, pulling me to my feet. We ran through the corridors, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing behind us. When we reached the central courtyard, our path was blocked by figures in protective suits. "Freeze!" an amplified voice ordered. "You're under quarantine." Marcus looked at me, panic evident in his eyes. "What do we do now?" I had no answer. My arm throbbed, and I could feel something spreading through my body. Alien knowledge flowed through my mind, fragments of information that I could barely comprehend. The figures in protective suits approached slowly, weapons in hand. Behind them, I saw shadows moving unnaturally, as if the darkness itself was coming to life. We were trapped, caught between two equally deadly threats. On one side, military forces ready to contain us at any cost. On the other, a voracious darkness that threatened to swallow everything in its path. And in the midst of it all, I was changing into something I didn't fully understand. As the siege closed in around us, a certainty formed in my mind. The next decisions we made would not only determine our fate, but possibly the fate of all humanity. Darkness was advancing, guns were drawn, and time was running out. Whatever happened next, I knew that nothing would be the same. The Black Prism had changed the rules of the game, and now, for better or worse, I was part of it. Time seemed to freeze in that moment of indecision. The figures in protective suits advanced slowly, their weapons pointed at us. Behind them, the darkness pulsed and squirmed as if it were alive and hungry. It was then that something inside me changed. A wave of energy ran through my body, emanating from the infected arm. My vision distorted, and for a moment, I could see beyond what human eyes normally perceive. The figures in protective suits were no longer solid, but a tangle of chance lines. The darkness behind them was not darkness at all, but a vortex of overlapping alternative realities. "Marcus," I whispered, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Hold my hand and don't let go, no matter what." He looked at me, confused and scared, but obeyed. I closed my eyes and concentrated on the alien sensation that was now coursing through my veins. With an effort of will I didn't know I possessed, I bent reality around us. The world exploded into a kaleidoscope of colors and sensations. It felt as if we were being pulled in all directions at once, our bodies stretching to the limit of what was physically possible. And then, as abruptly as it began, everything stopped. I opened my eyes, gasping. We were in a dense forest, the air humid and heavy around us. There was no sign of the military base or the threatening figures. Marcus let go of my hand and staggered backwards, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. What have you done?" I looked down at my hands, noticing how black lines now covered both arms, pulsing with a strange light. I think I transported us to another place, or maybe Another reality. Marcus shook his head, trying to process the information. That's impossible. It goes against every law of physics we know. I think the rules have changed, I replied, feeling a strange calm envelop me. The alien knowledge in my mind was organizing itself, forming patterns that I was beginning to understand. We explored our new surroundings cautiously. The forest was dense and ancient, with trees that seemed to touch the sky, but there was something wrong. The colors were slightly different, more intense than they should be, and the sky, where the sun and clouds should be, there was just a black void dotted with unknown stars. "Where are we?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm not sure," I answered honestly, "but I don't think we're in our world anymore. Maybe not even in our dimension." We walked for hours, the forest seeming to stretch endlessly in all directions. Time was hard to measure here. There was no day or night, just a diffuse light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. It was when we reached a clearing that everything changed again. In the center of the clearing was a structure that defied logic. It seemed to be made of solid shadows, their shapes constantly changing, as if it couldn't decide on a final form. And emanating from this structure, I felt something. A vast and ancient presence, as far beyond human comprehension as we are beyond an amoeba. "What is it?" Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. Before I could answer, the structure reacted. Tentacles of darkness stretched out towards us, not threatening but curious. Instinctively, I stretched out my hand, the black lines on my arm pulsing in sync with the tentacles, and then communication began. It wasn't words or images, but pure concepts poured directly into my mind. I saw the history of the universe unfold in seconds, understood the secrets of the creation and destruction of galaxies, witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations in the blink of an eye. And at the center of it all, there was the black prism. It wasn't a weapon, nor was it an evil entity as we had feared. It was a probe, sent by a civilization so advanced that it made our science look like child's play. Its purpose: to study, catalog, and, when necessary, correct anomalies in the fabric of reality. But something had gone wrong. The probe had been damaged on its journey through the dimensions, its programming corrupted. What should have been a passive observer had become a chaotic force, distorting and consuming everything in its path. And now, through me, she was trying to correct herself. When the communication ended, I fell to my knees, exhausted. Marcus rushed over to help me, his face a mixture of concern and fascination. "What happened? What did you see?" It took me a moment to find my voice. "Marcus, I think I know what we need to do, but you're not going to like it." I explained what I had learned, watching his face go from incredulity to horror and finally to resignation. "Are you telling me," he said slowly, "that in order to save our world, we need to merge with this thing?" I nodded gravely. "Not just us. We need to find a way to channel its energy back into our world, correcting the damage that has been done. But by doing that, we'll become part of it," Marcus concluded, his voice a whisper. The weight of that decision hung over us. Sacrificing our humanity to save humanity. It was an impossible choice, but it was the only one we had. I looked at the alien structure, its power pulsing in sync with the lines on my arms. I knew that once we took this step, there would be no turning back. We would become something beyond human, guardians of a technology that our world was not ready to understand. But what was the alternative? Let our world be consumed by darkness. "I'm ready," I finally said, my voice firm despite the fear I felt. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then nodded, determination shining in his eyes. Together, then, side by side, we walked towards the alien structure. Tentacles of darkness enveloped us, and I felt my consciousness expand, merging with something vast and incomprehensible. Our journey had only just begun, and the fate of countless worlds now rested in our newly transformed hands. The black prism was no longer our enemy. It was part of us, and we were part of it. The transformation was both agonizing and ecstatic. I felt my consciousness expanding beyond the limits of what I thought possible, my perception stretching across dimensions I didn't even know existed. Next to me, I felt Marcus going through the same metamorphosis. When we finally woke up, we were no longer completely human. Our physical bodies had become receptacles for something much bigger, much older, and infinitely more powerful. I looked at Marcus, or what used to be Marcus. His body now pulsed with the same dark energy that coursed through my veins. His eyes were vortices of miniature stars. "Can you hear me?" I asked, my voice reverberating through multiple realities. "Yes," replied Marcus, his voice equally altered. "And I can see everything." I understood what he meant. Our perception now extended beyond linear time and space. We could see the past, the present, and possible futures unfolding simultaneously. And what we saw was terrifying. The black prism infection in our world was spreading exponentially. Entire cities were being swallowed up by darkness, alternative realities beginning to overlap and collide. "We need to go back," I said, feeling the weight of the responsibility we were now carrying. Marcus nodded, his form oscillating between human and something other. "But how? And what do we do when we get there?" I closed my eyes, or what was left of them, and concentrated. Alien knowledge now flowed freely through my mind, revealing secrets of the universe that no human had ever dreamed of understanding. "We can use the energy of the black prism to create a portal," I explained. "But we need to be careful. If we release too much power at once, we could end up destroying the very fabric of the reality we're trying to save." We worked together, our minds now interconnected in a way that transcended normal communication. We manipulated cosmic energies with the ease of children playing with building blocks. A vortex of dark energy formed in front of us, pulsating with infinite possibilities. Without hesitation, we plunged into it. The journey back was an indescribable experience. Glimpses of alternative realities flashed past us in a kaleidoscopic blur. I saw versions of myself and Marcus in thousands of different lives, some familiar, others completely alien. When we emerged on the other side, the scene that greeted us was pure chaos. We were back at the military base, but it was unrecognizable. The sky was a whirlwind of impossible colors, reality bending and breaking around us. Distorted figures that had once been human wandered aimlessly, their minds lost in the sea of infinite possibilities. "Are we too late?" Marcus' voice echoed in my mind. "No," I replied, feeling a fierce determination growing inside me. "There's still time, but we need to act now." We concentrated our newly acquired energy, creating a bubble of stable reality around us. It was like trying to hold back a dam with our bare hands, but we succeeded. Slowly, we began to expand our influence. Meter by meter, we rebuilt reality, separating the dimensions that had chaotically merged. It was then that we felt resistance. A vast, evil presence rose up against us. It wasn't the original black prism, but something that had evolved from it. A conscious entity born of dimensional chaos, feeding off the destruction of reality. "She's not going to let us fix things easily," Marcus said, his voice strained with the effort to keep our bubble of reality intact. I knew he was right. We were about to enter a battle for the very existence of reality as we knew it. The entity attacked, waves of chaotic energy crashing against our barrier. It felt as if every atom of my being was being torn apart and reassembled millions of times a second. We counterattacked, channeling the power of the black prism in its purest form. It was a cosmic dance of creation and destruction, each movement reshaping the reality around us. As we fought, I saw flashes of the world beyond our bubble, entire cities being swallowed up by chaos, mountains folding like paper, oceans evaporating into clouds of quantum possibilities. The battle seemed to go on forever. One moment, we were winning, pushing the chaos back. The next, we were almost crushed by its overwhelming force. That's when I realized we couldn't win this fight alone. "Marcus," I called through our mental connection, "we need help. We need to reach all versions of ourselves in all realities." He understood immediately. Together, we expanded our consciousness beyond the limits of our own dimension, touching the minds of countless versions of ourselves in infinite realities. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. I felt the power of a million eyes flowing through me, each contributing their own unique perspective, their own piece of the cosmic puzzle. With this new power, we attacked the chaotic entity with everything we had. Reality shook and bent around us, the very fabric of space-time threatening to tear under the pressure of our titanic conflict. And then, finally, we felt the entity begin to give way, but our victory came at a price. As we pushed the chaos back, I felt my own existence beginning to fragment. I looked at Marcus and saw the same thing happening to him. We had become something other than human in order to save humanity. And now, it seemed that we would have to sacrifice even this transcendental existence to complete our mission. As the reality around us began to stabilize, I felt my consciousness dispersing, becoming one with the very fabric of the universe. Our battle was almost over, but what would come next? That was the question that echoed through the infinite versions of myself as we prepared for the final blow. The fate of all reality hung by a thread, and we were that thread. The universe shook. Our collective consciousness, now spread across countless realities, concentrated on a single point of existence. The place where it all began, the NASA laboratory where the black prism was first discovered. In that fleeting moment of cosmic clarity, I understood the true nature of our struggle. It wasn't just a battle against chaos, but an evolutionary test on a universal scale. The black prism was not a weapon or an accident, but a catalyst, a means by which the universe itself tested its creations. And we, in our new transcendental form, were both the participants and the judges of this cosmic test. With a final, colossal effort, we channeled all the energy we had accumulated. The chaotic entity, born of the corruption of the black prism, roared in defiance, its tentacles of distorted reality stretching across the entire fabric of space-time. "Now, Marcus!" I shouted through our multidimensional mental connection. Together, we released a wave of pure, uncorrupted energy. It was like watching the Big Bang in slow motion, except that instead of creating, we were restoring. Reality bent, broke, and then realigned itself. I saw cities being rebuilt in seconds, mountains returning to their places, oceans calming down. The timelines that had become tangled began to separate and straighten out. But as the universe healed, I felt my own existence, and Marcus, fragmenting even further. "It's working!" Marcus' voice echoed across the dimensions, weaker by the moment. "But I know," I replied, feeling a strange peace envelop me. "It's the price we have to pay." Our expanded consciousness began to dissolve, becoming part of the very fabric of the reality we were restoring. It was painful and beautiful at the same time, like being born and dying simultaneously in a million different universes. As we dissipated, I caught one last glimpse of the NASA lab. I saw Elena Volkov, my former mentor, entering the room. Her face showed confusion, as if she had just woken up from a strange dream. She approached the place where the black prism had been. Now, in its place, there was only a small, apparently harmless crystal. With the last shred of my individual consciousness, I sent a thought to Elena. Protect it, study it, but never, ever try to activate it again. I don't know if she heard me. I don't know if anyone will ever know what really happened, the sacrifice we made to save not just our world, but the entire web of reality. My last sensation was that of merging completely with the universe. It wasn't the end, I realized, but a transformation. Marcus and I didn't die, not really. We became silent guardians. Our consciousness spread across the stars, ever vigilant. The black prism still exists, of course. It will always exist in one form or another. It is an integral part of the fabric of the cosmos, a test and a challenge for any civilization that encounters it. Sometimes, on silent nights when the stars shine brightly, I imagine that I can feel echoes of other realities, other selves that have made different choices. I wonder if they too have found their way into this transcendental existence, or if they are still stuck in the life and death cycles of their individual universes. And sometimes, when the veil between realities gets particularly thin, I think I can hear Marcus' voice echoing through the void, "Was it worth it?" And every time, without hesitation, I answer, yes, 1,000 times yes. Because in the end, what is existence if not the sum of our choices and sacrifices? We chose to sacrifice our humanity, our individuality, so that humanity as a whole could continue. And as long as there are stars in the sky and worlds spinning in their orbits, as long as there are beings looking at the cosmos with wonder and fear, we will be there. Watching, protecting, remembering. The black prism transformed us, consumed us, and finally freed us. And through that liberation, we gave the universe a second chance. Now all that remains is to wait and see what humanity and all the other races on all the other worlds will do with that chance. Because the test never really ends, it just evolves. And we evolve with it, forever part of the great cosmic mystery we once tried to understand. This is my story, our story, the story of the black prism and the choice that changed the fate of all reality. Remember it, learn from it. And when you look up at the stars, know that we are there, always vigilant, always waiting. Because the next test could be just around the corner in the cosmos.